also had incredible grandparents and incredible grandfather. And what stays as of today from him, from what he taught you?
Well, you're right. This is something we have in common. My mother had me when she was very young. She had just turned 17 years old. She was still in high school in Albuquerque, New Mexico. In fact, they tried to kick her out of high school for being pregnant, and my grandfather said, no, you can't kick her out. It's a public school. She gets to finish high school. So anyways, there she was, pregnant with me in high school and finishing in her whole senior year after I was born. And because she was so young, my grandparents took me every summer so that she could have, some other kind of life for a few months. Not only she was, when you are a very, very young mother, you grow up very fast. And so every summer, from the age of 3 or 4 until I was about 16, I went and spent with my grandparents on their ranch in South Texas. And my grandfather, at that point, so I only knew him as a rancher. He had done a bunch of things in his life, but at that point he was a rancher. And he did, and this is quite common, I think, in rural areas, that people do everything themselves. He did his own veterinary work, he repaired everything. He had this D6 Caterpillar bulldozer that he'd bought for like $5,000 because it was completely broken down. And we spent an entire summer fixing it. And to get the transmission out of the thing, we had to build our own crane. And so he had an incredible resourcefulness to him. He believed he could solve any problem. And I sort of watched him, his veterinary work on the cattle. He would make his own needles. He would get a little piece of wire and heat it up with a blowtorch and pound it flat and then sharpen it and drill a little hole through it. Some of the cattle even survived.
And I remember a very meaningful lesson that he gave you when you were in the car with your grandmother who used to smoke.
Oh yes, that was a very formative moment for me. And I thought I was a very smart little kid. I was very confident. And I'm only at this point maybe 10 years old. And this was, this would have been 1974. And there were a lot of radio commercials on the car radio about how smoking cigarettes kills you. This was 10 years after the U.S. Surgeon General's warning, and it was still like there was big campaigns to get people to stop smoking. And one of these radio commercials said, every puff on a cigarette takes 2 minutes off of your life. And my grandmother was a chain smoker. She smoked all day long, and so always when we were in the car, she would have the window down, and she'd be smoking the whole time. And I hated this. I thought it smelled bad, and I didn't like it. And I was listening to these radio commercials, and so I decided I would calculate how many years of her life she had taken off. If every puff is 2 minutes, and I did some estimating, and I stood up in the back of the car, and I proudly announced that she had taken, I don't remember what the number was, let's say 7 years off of her life. And I thought in my 10-year-old brain that they were going to congratulate me for being so clever, and instead she burst into tears. And I was taken aback, and my grandfather pulled the car over on the side of the road, and he had never said one harsh word to me, by the way. In our entire relationship, he never did say a harsh word to me, by the way. And so he pulled me around, he took me out of the car, and took me out to the back side of the car. She's still in the front seat, tears coming down her cheeks. And he said to me, I had no idea what he was going to say, and he said to me, Jeff, one day you'll understand that it's harder to be kind than it is to be clever.
And the reason I think this is a very meaningful lesson is because there's this idea that technology is clever but not kind.
Yeah.
And in some ways, it's a choice. Mm-hmm. And technology is just a tool that one can use.
That's right.
And you need to be clever to make technology, but you can be kind in applying it.
Yeah.
And I do think that for most of all, you should also feel very at ease, not only in being clever, but equally being kind in what you do.
Yeah.
And the demonstration of what you've built and what Amazon is doing, and in similar ways, different conversations over the years we've had of this idea that business is a harsh environment, there's a very important humane side of it.
Yes.
And then what we do is really we put technology and cleverness to the service of others. Mm-hmm. And you can do that in a way which is kind and valuable.
Yes. And I think long-term thinking squares these things. So whenever you're in a situation where it seems that short-term, you're doing a business deal with someone, and if you think you're never going to deal with them again, then maybe you would come to a certain answer. But if you realize, I'm probably going to deal with this person for the rest of my life in one way or another, you come to a different answer. And so long-term thinking, whether it's with your customers or your business partners, or even with family members and loved ones, thinking about, okay, what do I want this to be like, not just right now, but 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. So in retail, I would always rather lose a sale than lose a customer. And you're thinking long-term. And shareholders and customers and the business, everyone is aligned if you think out 10 or 20 years.
And that is also important in moments like the ones we're living, where there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of angst. If you just get devoured by now, you'll lose the optimism for tomorrow. And I do feel that if you do look at long term, and if you think on decades rather than months, yes, what matters today is important for 10 years.
Yes.
And if you have that idea that 10 years things will be better and that we will have made progress, it helps today and it does relieve a lot of angst.
It also helps you decide what to focus on. So if, in a world that's rapidly changing, and because of AI and all the technologies we have and the dynamism in the world, so many things are changing, and they're changing so rapidly. So if you think long term, it forces you to think, what are the points of stability? What is not going to change? And one of the things that changes very slowly is customer needs. And so you can build a strategy around customer needs that will have durability. It will be durable in time. So an example, Amazon, is that customers like fast deliveries. And so you would never expect 10 years from now, it would be impossible to imagine a customer saying, I love Amazon, I just wish you delivered a little more slowly. Or, I love Amazon, I just wish your prices were a little higher. Or, at Blue Origin, I love your rockets, but I just wish they were a little less reliable. And so these ideas, these big ideas that are customer-based, they start with the customer. It's an idea that is in the customer's brain. Those are the ones, because human nature doesn't change rapidly. And so what we as customers want tends to change slowly. And if you base your energies and direction and strategies and tactics, everything that makes a company effective around those customer needs, then you can change the details of how you get there all the time, because the world is changing so rapidly. The technologies will change, your competitive set will change, everything will change except those needs. And so that's another way that long-term thinking is protective,